Hey, as a developer, you might be thinking, why should I build a product and sell it if I can just sell access to my code? So in this episode, we're going to build an application where a user can make a payment via Stripe and he will automatically be granted access to a private GitHub repository. Here are a few examples of how this can work. For example, Jumpstart, you can pay a subscription or pay once, and after paying, you will get access to a private GitHub repository. Similar with Sidekick, there is a free version of the gem, and then there is a premium gem that you can pay a subscription or just a one-time payment for. Similar with the Avo, you can access the free gem, but there is also a premium option with additional features. Also in SuperRails, if you are a paid subscriber, you will also get access to the superrails.com source code. How does it work? Basically, you click on subscribe, and after the payment is processed by Stripe, you will be granted access to a private GitHub repository. Here is a very interesting example from the Next.js and React world that actually inspired me for this video. This here is just a one-pager. It's just like a landing page with a Pay Now button. If you click on the Pay Now button, you will be redirected to a Stripe payment page, and after processing the payment, you will be granted access to a private GitHub repository. That's it. And just with this small product, this guy seems to be doing quite well in terms of sales by just selling access to a private GitHub repository. So let's see how we can do this. And we're going to do it on an example of basically any private GitHub repository. Here I have a private GitHub repository, and I will give access to any user that pays via Stripe. Why use Stripe? Why not use something like Gumroad? Because Gumroad is an additional middleman that is just going to provide you this landing page, and they're going to take 10% commission on top of the Stripe commission. So look, Gumroad is taking 10% flat, but if we go lower, what are the fees? Let's go to the what are the fees. There is the Stripe fees. So you will be paying not only for Stripe, but also for Gumroad. So in this episode, we're going to build the basic page. We're not going to do a lot of styling, but it will look more or less like a page with a Pay Now button. And when the user checks out and the payment is completed, then we are going to use the GitHub API to give the user access to a private GitHub repository. So we're going to start with a fresh Stripe organization. I've just created the Sell Fast organization, and I'm going to start with a fresh Ruby on Rails app. So I have just created this repository. I named it Sell Fast, and let's run the app. It's basically an empty Rails application at the moment. Let's create a basic landing page. I will say Rails generate controller home index. So it'll be a controller named home with an index action. I will go to our roots and redirect the root to home controller index action Rails server. And here we have a basic landing page that we can style however we want. Now I'm going to go to Stripe and I'm going to create a product. So let's say we're going to sell access to our private repository for $1,000. Let's make it $999. So SuperRails repo access, code access. It'll be a one-off payment. It'll be in dollars. Let's make it $999. Add product. So I have created a product, and now I'm going to go to payment links. This is actually the easiest way to add the external checkout using Stripe. I'm going to select this product that I have just created. So I'm creating the checkout link for this product. And advanced options, this is important. I'm going to add a custom field, and I will name it GitHub username. Let's GitHub username so that it looks nice here. So the user should input his email, his GitHub username, his card details. Let's create the link. And here is the URL. I will copy this link and put it on my home index page. I will add a equals link to by now. I will add the link and the target blank so that it opens in a new tab, not the same tab. Okay, let's go back to our application. I have this buy now button. When I click the button, it opens the Stripe checkout. I can input the email. Let's be like full yarrow@shm.com, whatever. A valid demo code, so 4242 always works. Let's click on pay. It is going to process the payment. In this test version, it will be successful with this card number. If we go back to our Stripe customers, I see that the customer has just been created. I think this might be the one. But we did not give access to the source code. We need to add an integration to the GitHub API. And first of all, before doing this, we need to let our application listen to the Stripe webhooks. So it's going to work so. The user has a link to pay on Stripe. He pays, Stripe sends our application information about the payment, and based on this successful payment information and the username from GitHub, we're going to grant access to a GitHub repository. So step number 2 is going to be processing Stripe webhooks. So for this, I'm going to install the gem Stripe bundle. Now I'm going to find the gem Stripe on GitHub. And we need to add an initializer. And in the initializer, we're going to add the Stripe API key. So going to initializers. Inside config, I will create stripe.rb. And here I will add the Stripe secret key. So to get the secret key, I'm going to go to the developer settings, API keys, reveal the secret key and copy it, paste it here. Now let's start the Rails console and see if we can access the Stripe API. I will say Stripe price.list. And we do see the price that we have just created. So $999.00, and we see that these are dollars because the currency is USD. Okay, so we can access the Stripe API in our console. Now let's listen to Stripe webhooks. To do this, I'm going to go back to the developers, open webhooks, and add a local listener. So first of all, I need to install the Stripe CLI. I have already installed it, so I'm going to go to Stripe login. Okay, I'm going to log in into this organization. Looks good. Allow access. Next, I'm going to listen to webhooks. I'm going to listen to webhooks on port 3000. And I need to add the webhook root to listen to. So I'm going to go to our roots and say post webhook, because here I'm listening to /webhook to webhook create. Let's call it webhooks create. So let's create the webhooks controller. I'm going to go to controllers, webhooks controller.rb class webhooks controller that inherits from application controller, and we're going to have a create action. And inside this create action, I'm actually going to copy this Sinatra code. Let's copy this example and paste it here. And let's clean it up so that it works inside our Rails controller. First of all, I will delete all these extra lines. We don't need to require Stripe because we have already installed it as a gem. The Stripe API key is present in the Stripe initializer. The endpoint secret will be inside the dev create. It's fine. We don't need to set the port. We don't need to set this post. And we don't need to return the status. So this should more or less work. We have a webhook endpoint, and let's try sending something to it. I'm going to start the Rails server in another window. Rails server. So here I've got the listener, here I've got the Rails server, and in a third tab, I'm going to try to send a webhook. So I will copy this webhook. Let's trigger a webhook. So here we see we had a post request. The response is 422, and it is some error, invalid authenticity token. So for this webhooks controller, I'm going to skip verification of authenticity token so that we can accept post requests from outside our application. Let's try once again. Okay, here it was a successful request, and here it was also a successful request. Let's try putting a binding inside the payment intent.succeeded. So let's say binding.b. Let's send another request. And we can explore the event object. We can explore the event.data.object, that is the payment intent itself. So it works well. We can listen to Stripe webhooks. Next point is going to be to find the GitHub username that was submitted. Let's quit and start the server once again. And let's try doing a real checkout. So now, again, I'm going to click on the Buy Now button. Let's input an email, a GitHub username, let's say Yarrow123, card information, I will, before clicking pay, I will listen not to payment intent succeeded, but to the checkout session completed. So when checkout.session.completed, because when the checkout session is completed, here in this payload, we will have the GitHub username. We will not have it inside the payment intent.succeeded. So I will put the binding here instead. Let's click on pay. And let's look at our console. So here we are inside checkout session completed, and we are in the binding. Let's get the event. Let's try finding the GitHub username, and we actually have it here. We see there is a value Yarrow123. So let's try accessing this value. We have event.data.object .custom fields, and it can be an array of custom fields. So we're going to find the one that has the key GitHub username. So I'm going to say .find. Inside find, I will have like object. We're going to find the one where the object.key equals GitHub username. I'm doing not just custom fields first in case there can be multiple custom fields. So let's find this one if it is present, and it gives just this element outside of the array. We're going to say dot text and dot value. So this is how we can get this custom value of the GitHub username. So let's say GitHub username equals this big line. Okay, so we are processing the Stripe webhooks, and if there was a successful payment, we find the GitHub username that we want to give access to. So the next step is going to be to actually integrate the GitHub API and give the user access to our code base. Let's install the OctoKit gem, OctoKit Ruby gem. So this is a strange name of a gem, but it is actually the gem for working with the GitHub API. So I'm going to add the gem OctoKit to our gem file and run bundle. And now let's try playing with this gem a bit. So let's open the AutoGit client, but we need an access token. So let's see how we can get a GitHub access token. Let's open GitHub. I will go to settings. Here, developer settings, personal access token, find create tokens. I will generate a new token. As you see here, I already have a token for Super Rails to grant access, read and write access to other repositories. So now we're going to add a new token. Let's say sell fast, and description is give access to invoice app. Only select repositories, invoice app, and account permissions are going to be no, actually not account, but repository permissions are going to be administration. So read and write. So I'm going to let this API token give access and take away access from GitHub repositories. Let's generate the token. Here we have the token. Let's copy it somewhere. Okay, now let's try interacting with the API in our console, with the GitHub API. So access token equals this token. Client, client.user.login. Okay, so we get information about the user. Looks good. Let's try getting information about the repository, collaborators of the repository that we want to give access to. Let's say client.collaborators, and we're going to need a repository path. The repository path is going to be Vaishmarov/invoice app. And here I see that two GitHub accounts have access to this repository. Let's have a look at it once again. I will go to settings, collaborators, and you see there is me and there is also Adrian who has access to this repository. Let's try programmatically giving access to another user to this repository. So I will say client.add collaborator, the repository. Oh no, let's try once again. Client.add collaborator, Vaishmarov/invoice app, and the username would be something like, let's say, secret pray. Let's give this user access. So I will click enter. It gives me true. Let us refresh the page, and you see this user has been invited to access the repository. Okay, so we managed to programmatically, using the GitHub API, give access to a GitHub repository to a specific username. Let's try once again. I will delete this user's access, and let's try integrating this into our Stripe checkout flow. So here I'm going to start the GitHub client. I will say GitHub client equals AutoGit client new, access token equals this access token, and now I will say GitHub client dot add collaborator. The repository name is going to be, let's put it somewhere else, like repo path equals Vaishmarov/invoice app. So we're going to add the access to this repository path to this GitHub username that is provided in the checkout. And that's it. Let's see if it works. So once again, I'm going to start the Rails server, Rails S. Basically, the Rails app is needed here only to process the webhooks. That's it. So let's go to buy now. Let's just double check. Only me and Adrian have access to this repository. I will input an email, a GitHub username, card information, pay, and I expect to receive a webhook from Stripe and make a request to GitHub to give access to the repository. So if I just refresh the page, you see Alexander has actually been added as a collaborator to the repository. And that's basically it. In our case, we need the Rails application only to process the webhooks. We only need the webhooks controller, the root, and that's it. You can put the buy now link anywhere on any website. And just this way, let's just demonstrate it one last time. Let's find some GitHub user, like Marco Roth, for example. Let's try giving him access. So I'm going to create a new checkout. I'm going to go to buy now. So I put in this GitHub username. I click pay. Stripe will send the webhook to our application that there has been a successful payment and that we should give access to the username. And if I go back to the repository, you see the user has been invited to the application. And just like this, you can use Stripe, payment links, and GitHub API to sell your code. That's it.